Meeting, especially we have a full house. Welcome, everyone. Sherry, if you can start with the roll call. And I would advise everyone to turn on your mic because it was off.
You just hit the button, the light will turn green, and now your mics are live. Okay. All right. Mr. DeLonge.
Here.
Ms. Groot. Here. Mr. Lilly.
Here.
Ms. Tornatore.
Here.
Mr. Horian.
Here.
And Mr. Desai.
Here.
Thank you, Sherry. With the minutes, everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes on December 12th, 2022. Any motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from December 12th.
Second?
Second that motion.
Thank you. Sherry, can you do the roll call?
We can do all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Alrighty then. We're starting with a quasi-judicial hearing. And with that hearing, we start with, first of all, the Patriot communication by any member, if you...
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members, if there has been any ex parte communication, now's the time to disclose for the record.
I always ride my bike around town. You might see me with a big hat, and I always check all the places before the meeting. So I rode my bike and really went around the whole location. So just want to mention that.
There should be no conflict there.
Okay.
No ex parte, but I do have a storage unit with home board over in Port Orange.
Okay, so in Port Orange, so again, no, that doesn't create a conflict for you, sir.
Thank you.
And I have the same situation in Port Orange. We have a storage unit.
Okay, so no
No conflict. No conflict.
All right. Thank you, Chair. This is a public hearing for review of request of special exception, I believe. Any individual, including the applicant, staff, witnesses, or members of the public who plan to speak or offer testimony for this item during the public hearing, please rise and be sworn in by the clerk.
So if any of you wish to speak for or against, I need you to stand up now and get sworn in, okay? If you think you may want to speak, get sworn in and then you don't have to speak. Okay? So, that's to be sworn in. Okay, so everyone raise your right hand. All right, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during today's hearing? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, which requires a public hearing to comply with the procedural requirements established in Florida law. Quasi-judicial hearings are less formal than trials in circuit court, but they are more formal than some other types of meetings, and they must follow the basic standards of notice and due process. And all decisions must be made based on competent, substantial evidence. Please note that only competent, substantial, fact-based testimony or evidence will be considered by the board in its deliberation and voting on this item. Pure speculation or mere opinion, not based on competent facts, cannot legally be considered by the board in weighing the appropriateness of the variance, and lay testimony with fact-based support may be considered competent and substantial evidence. If you intend to speak, please keep in mind when you come forward, please state your name clearly for the record, whether or not you have been sworn in and your qualifications and interest in the matter that you're going to speak on. Madam Clerk, has this item been properly advertised?
Yes, it has.
Okay. So at this time, if any board member has any conflict of interest, which I think we've already taken care of that, and I think there are none. No ex parte communications have been disclosed. So, Chair and staff, I will turn it over to you to begin deliberating the item.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Now, if we can have Noel Eaton do the presentation and start, appreciate it.
Good morning.
Morning, Planning and Zoning Board. Noelle Eaton, City Planner. I'm hoping that this will go by smoothly, but bear with me. I wanted to present all the information to you guys, so you obviously, have my planning analysis already included in the staff report, but this goes through, the criteria and the applicant's information. This is special exception 12022-030. It's an all-aboard storage Shores Depot special exception at 2616 South Atlantic Avenue. The owner applicant is 91 Oneida LLC, which is all aboard storage, and Andy Clark. The applicant's agent is Joey Posey from Storage Law Firm. The property size is approximately 1.56 acres and is located in the GCRD zoning district, which is our general commercial redevelopment district. The future land use is our tourist-oriented commercial, and the existing use of the property, as you may have seen, is the existing all-aboard storage facility that's combined with the Sherwin-Williams building, and then there is a vacant portion of the development site to the rear of the property. A little bit of background. In August of 2012, the Land Development Code was amended to establish parameters to permit interior storage facilities within the GCRD zoning district. This is, of course, these certain criteria that we'll go through. And then a few months later, Special Exception 2012-1 was approved by the City Commission to establish the interior storage facility at this current location. On August of last year, the applicant and property owner submitted this special exception application. It was also in conjunction with a rezoning and future land use amendment to that vacant portion, which you guys saw last year. And then also accompanied that was a land development code amendment to establish a parking criteria calculation based on the Institute of Traffic Engineers Manual for Parking Generation Rates. Again, all of these applications were approved by the City Commission on December 13th of 2022. This is the development site shown in red. You can see Seahaven Townhomes to the left and north of the development, the 2626 condominium to the south, as well as Cowlicks in there, and then Beachcomber Park to the north. There is Peck Plaza on the east, the southeast, and Emerald Shores on the northeast of the property. This is an aerial view of the same location, again showing the development site with the buildings abutting it. There is also Key Colony to the south as well. The special exception is to allow the expansion of the existing interior storage facility use on the development site, which again is at 2616 and the vacant property. These properties will be combined if approved through a special exception. The applicant is proposing a 35-foot building height, which is 3 stories, 36,600 square foot gross floor area with a 12,740 square foot footprint, and then approximately 180 storage units averaging 150 square feet. These numbers can change, depending on the how the building is constructed, but this is the approximate. All of these applications, will be reviewed through the site plan review consistent with Chapter 4. So this will go come back to Planning and Zoning Board and City Commission at that time. This is the concept plan provided. It shows the building in blue with the existing building shown in front of it. They have provided setbacks, landscape buffers, a reduction in parking, surplus parking. They still have what's required. And I can zoom in on this later and go through any of that if you have questions. It is provided in the packet. This is just another zoomed in. Again, I can just go back to it later on if we have questions. This is the elevation that was provided last week that's on your dais this morning. This is a similar elevation from what was proposed, but the applicant and agents from the Seahaven Townhomes have agreed to a few number of conditions that I'll go over. This is just trying to take away the blue and white component of it, and you'll see they're proposing some red colors with this. This will be reviewed at time of site plan as well for consistency. So there are 8 proposed conditions that the applicant has provided staff. This is, I'll read through them. Number 1 is a 35-foot maximum height of the building, 4 sides, with the allowance for additional height for roof. And the roof shall include that red terracotta roof feature similar to the Sea Havens. The use of lower current elevation on the unimproved parcel as the base elevation to the property, rather than the paved area, which is higher. The facade, especially in the rear, using the red terracotta color and creating faux windows with shutters, possibly giving the Mediterranean style by using the barrel tile roof element. Position the building to create a 20-foot side setback from the north property line. 10 foot is what is required. Number 5 is the use of low-level 1-story lighting on the rear of the building, which is the west side. 6 is ensure that the loading and unloading zone is conducted on the east side of the proposed building. And then number 7, restrict the hours of access, suggested 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. This is a criteria of the special exception already, so you'll see this later. It is a requirement. And then number 8 is a landscape buffer on the west side of the property between Sea Havens and the proposed building to include 6 palm trees per 100 linear feet, species dependent on availability and survivability. And each tree shall have a gray wood trunk of at least 6 feet in height. So this is so that the top of, the fronds are above the 6-foot wall that's behind there. Our requirement in the Land Development Code is a tree is a minimum of 8 feet in height. So I think between these two, between the requirements we already have and then the gray wood trunk, you should be able to see these above the wall. Here is where we're going to get into the criteria. There are 3 different sections that have to be analyzed through a special exception. These first are the special exception criteria. And I'll read through these are a summary of what the criteria is asking for and then what staff has provided as analysis. The granting of this request will not adversely affect the public interest. Staff's comments are that the use is not industrial or hazardous in nature and currently exists on the development site. There is a low amount of vehicle trips per day as demonstrated in the ITE manual that you've been provided and the traffic impact study. The loading zone is located on the west side of the existing building and east side of the proposed, which is out of view of the public right-of-way as a requirement, as well as away from the abutting Sea Haven development. The hours of operation, again, restrict from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and there are other operational standards, which I'll go over later, that ensure the public health and safety. Sea Haven's townhomes would have a restricted view between the 6-foot-high wall that exists there today on Florida Shores Boulevard and the 3-story building. However, this is not specific to this special exception. The GCRD district allows a 45-foot building height, and the applicant is proposing that 35-foot. Conditions and safeguards may be imposed that are consistent to ensure public health safety. This is really a function that you guys have. The board may also prescribe a reasonable time limit to the special exception to begin or be completed. This special exception shall be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the Land Development Code and district. Staff is that this is consistent based on the ordinance that was passed specifically permitting these uses through the special exception in the GCRD district. Compliance with the zoning regulations. The existing site meets the city's zoning regulations. The proposed setbacks and buffers either meet or exceed the requirements of the GCRD district. The plan does propose to reduce some surplus parking. They are required 49 parking stalls and are proposing 59, so they still have surplus for what's required based on that new calculation of the Land Development Code. And then the proposed concept does meet the requirements of the zoning district. The compliance with city or state agencies having to review this. The city is really the reviewing agency, and it's consistent with that. There is also a sea turtle lighting review that will be complete at time of site plan. The proposed use will not generate an undue amount of traffic congestion. The existing and proposed layout do not create internal hazards or danger for on or off-site. The 2021 Volusia County roadway vehicle trips per day is stating that on State Route A1A between Florida Shores Boulevard and Silver Beach Avenue, that there is an allowed 32,400 trips, and it's currently operating at 13,100. It still has another level of capacity left, and the use only proposes an additional 28 vehicle trips per day, which is 1 AM peak hour trip and 4 additional PM peak hours. This is a lower amount of vehicle trips per day. As you can see, many warehouses have a 2.5 weekday trips per 1,000 square feet, whereas a quality restaurant has 89.95 weekday trips per 1,000 square feet, and a residential townhome has 5.8 weekday trips per unit. So this is a very low traffic generator. The special exception will not materially alter the character of the surrounding neighborhood or adversely affect the value of surrounding lands, building, or natural resources. The use is going to occur inside both buildings. The loading is located out of public view. There is a concrete wall and a type D landscape buffer that is required abutting the residential zoning districts. There's a proposed 35-foot building height. There is a multifamily condominium to the south, which is 5 stories and approximately 45 feet tall. The Sea Havens townhomes to the west and north are mostly 2 stories and 20 feet tall. There are 8 units on the east side of Florida Shores Boulevard, just north of this, that are 3 stories and 35-foot tall units. The applicant has also provided similar architecture to the Sea Havens townhomes. This is the same criteria continued. This use is only allowed in the GCRD and TOC, tourist-oriented commercial land use, and is consistent with those requirements. There is a commercial use existing on the property today, as well as the abutting property of Cowlix Ice Cream. The special exception request is a commercial use, which is consistent with the abutting properties uses. Lighting is proposed as low level on the west side to accommodate abutting neighbors, and again, a low vehicle trip per day compared to other commercial uses. Staff is suggesting that the proposed expansion should not materially alter the character of the surrounding neighborhood and is overall a low impact use. The special exception will not adversely affect the natural environment, scenic beauty, create any pollution, or cause injurious heat, noise, or odor. Again, this property is already developed. It's not an industrial or hazardous use. The vacant portion of the property is just grass today, so there are no environmentally sensitive areas to it, and doesn't expect to be injurious to the natural or built environment. This is the second criteria. It's a little bit shorter. This is just what the Planning and Zoning Board shall review when reviewing a special exception. They're very similar type of criteria. Traffic generation and access for the proposed site will not adversely impact adjoining properties. Again, this traffic is a low traffic generator. The existing and proposed use shall not adversely impact the adjoining properties. There is an existing reciprocal parking and access easement between this property and the Cowlix parking for shared parking, and that's been shown in the packet along with the survey. There is, it says off-street parking and loading shall be provided so there is no adverse impact to adjoining properties. Again, the parking loading areas are located out of public view and away from abutting residential. Again, the type D buffer, landscape buffer should help provide some buffer of view to the parking and loading areas. The required yards and landscaping shall be consistent with the zoning. These are consistent. If they don't meet the requirements, they exceed them. The applicant has also provided assurance through some of those conditions that those will be met. Architecture and signage treatment shall comply with the Land Development Code. What is proposed is consistent with the Land Development Code and is also consistent with the Sea Havens townhomes to the west. The size, number, and location of special exception uses shall be limited to maintain the overall character of the district. The nearest, there is no other interior storage facilities beachside or in Daytona Beach shores. The nearest special exception is an overflow parking lot for the Delta Marriott, which is approximately 1,300 feet to the north. This is a this is a criteria specifically related to the interior storage facility use. They go through a little bit of construction type and then some of those operational standards that are to be met. The property dimension shall have 120 feet along it's an arterial roadway. This property has 220 feet of frontage. It shall have 20,000 square feet in size. This far exceeds that 68,888 square feet. I'm sorry, 68,088 square feet. It shall have a minimum of 5,000 gross floor area. The existing facility has 5,758, and the proposed is 36,600, exceeding that 5,000 minimum. Shall front an arterial roadway. State A1A is an arterial roadway. Shall not be located, an interior storage facility shall not be located within 2,500 feet of another interior storage facility. The closest one I could find is 4.6 miles over the river. This is a drive time, 4.6 miles. It is located in South Daytona's jurisdiction. Again, we don't have any beachside or within Daytona Beach shores. Hours of operation are 6 to 9. The applicant has provided that written assurance. This is a condition as well. Prohibited to have outdoor seating. The applicant's not proposing any outdoor seating. The docking and delivery shall not be visible from public right-of-way. This has been ensured through the site plan. Parking and other vehicle use shall be paved. That is consistent. They are proposing paved parking. The minimum green area shall be 10% of the lot size. This is proposing 26% green area. And then the landscape and buffers shall meet the requirements. They meet or exceed those land development code requirements. The principal structure shall be fully treated consistent with a uniform theme or architectural style. This is consistent and has been shown in the elevations as well as the conditions from the applicant. Fences, walls, and dumpsters shall have similar architectural treatment. There's no accessory structures proposed right now, but this would be reviewed at time of building permit to be consistent with the existing theme. No neon lighting is proposed at this time or ever. The lighting shall conform to the county sea turtle requirements. This is a requirement at site plan approval, and the applicant will have to have a review done by Volusia County. It's prohibited to project glare. The applicant's proposing that use of low-level one-story lighting along the west side abutting the Sea Haven townhomes, as well as if glare is projected in the future, it is a function of code enforcement, so that can be addressed. Prefabricated or metal walls are not proposed for this structure. Signage on windows is allowed to be 25%. The applicant's not proposing that at this time. And then these are the operational standards that the applicant's aware of this criteria, but it's basically a function of, public health and safety. It's prohibited to use the storage spaces as commercial use. It's prohibited to store hazardous materials. It's prohibited to store fuel equipment. It cannot be for residents or living, and there can be no electrical outlets in either unit, any of the units as well. You cannot have any type of trade or construction or manufacturing. And then the property owner, it's their responsibility, the property owner and the business owner, to ensure that these are met. The special exception may be approved for a limited period of time. That's a function of you guys. And then due public notice has been met. Notice to abutting property owners were sent. There is a site posting on site and legal advertisement in the Daytona Beach News Journal. These are just the conditions, again, to ensure some of these operations and standards are met between the abutting Sea Havens townhome and this proposed development. This is a summary of all of that criteria we just went over, saying that the criteria has been met. Public notices have been met. Community services review has been done. And as you guys have seen in your packet and today, public comment has been received and it has been included for the record. Staff is recommending approval of special exception 1/2022-030, provided the evidence and analysis conducted. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Noel. Alrighty, now we call for public input.
Is the applicant present?
The applicant present, I'm sorry.
And I think his counsel is with him this morning? Okay, good.
Joey Posey, 420 South Nova, attorney for the applicant. I just wanted to touch on a few things, and Noel, I think, went through it very detailed. And, obviously, we've been trying to do our best to be good neighbors and at the same time work within what the obvious rights of the property owner are too. So the few things I just wanted to mention offhand, just for folks in the audience, is that, the other thing to keep in mind is that this does have other approved commercial rights by right, that, if this isn't something that everybody seems as desirable, the other alternative is could be a restaurant, could be another retail building, and without any say in whether the height is 45 feet or not. And, again, it's, I guess, a matter of preference what you want to live next to, but that's just something to keep in mind. This is, I think the other side of the token to this is that, as in terms of what commercial uses are possible, this is probably the lowest impact use. It's a very low traffic generator. I'm not aware of any other commercial use that probably has a lower traffic generator or even utility demand, and that doesn't change the nature of it. It's still a commercial use. It generates taxes. It's operational, and it's a very badly needed use in the city too, because there's no other facilities in the city. And there's ways to do these right, because when you hear storage facility, sometimes it's akin to maybe what you're thinking about maybe 30 years ago with a roll-up door, and everybody doesn't know what's going on, and and the newer facilities are much nicer, and you can see a number of them even in the county that as these things are coming online, they look like office buildings, and that's the idea here, that make it look like an office building, and if there's anything we can do to be helpful, like again, we met with the representatives for the adjoining association, and we said, guys, we hear what you're saying, how do we make it better? And, including those restrictions on design and even capping it at that 35-foot height, that wasn't something that was overly burdensome on our part, and that, we wanted to be at least receptive to what the folks next door are, worried about on their end, because it's fear of the unknown. I get it. The one thing I wanted to mention with Noah's presentation is that with regard to the conditions on fuel and folks staying and everything, again, I want to make sure on the record that that's not happening. None of that. Nobody's bringing fuel into the facility. That's not allowed. Nobody's commercially operating outside of just using this unit as storage. And want to make those representations clear. I saw it said aware of them, but I at least want to make sure it's clear on the record that that is not what we're going to be doing here, and that's something that just want to make sure there was no confusion there. So other than that, we're available for questions. The owner of all the boards here, and he has several dozens of these facilities, and when it comes to storage, I'm not sure there's anybody else that probably knows it better than him. So if there's anything I can do, and again, I just also would like to reserve a little time if I hear some comments that, just to clarify, that I get a chance to respond. So.
I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If something else was built on this property, would the ceiling height be, again, 45 feet tall?
Yes.
So the builder has done a favor by making it lower?
Yes, well, that's exactly right.
So if it was a house even, it could be enlarged on this property?
I'm not sure there's any residential permitted on this property.
Nothing.
Right, so it would have to be a commercial use, but there's no restriction other than it's a 45-foot ceiling height, and there would be no discretion in that. It would just simply move through site plan.
And if it was an apartment complex, same thing, right?
In a world where apartments are a permitted use in that category, yes, but yes.
Just wanted everybody to know that.
Any other questions?
Driving around town, I've seen all board places before, usually gated to get into. Is this going to be gated to get into? How are they going to stop people from going in there 24/7?
I don't believe it's gated, and probably better if the owner speaks to that point. My understanding is it's a closed facility, so, you know, once that 9 o'clock comes around, you don't get in.
How's it gonna be closed? That's my question.
Okay. Hi, I'm Andy Clark. I'm the owner of All Aboard Storage and the applicant. And so we'll have security codes to get into the building like we have at the existing building that's there. We weren't planning on having it gated, although most customers like the gate, but we have a cross parking and access easement with Cowlix, so at nighttime Cowlix, or well, any time of day, Cowlix, when they're open, can use 18 parking spaces, and we're still providing the 18 parking spaces, so we need to maintain that parking and access easement with Cowlix and or whoever is there. And what else? And then also fire trucks need to be able to go around the existing building, as well as we're still going to have Sherwin-Williams there in the existing building, so they need to be able to access the back of their property also. So, but anyways, but we're big into security because that's what customers want, you know. So we'll have 24-hour cameras, and management can look on their phone and see those cameras at any time, and they're recorded, motion censored, and keypad access, also activated by people's phones to get into the building, only during access hours, and so. And any.
So if you're open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., I think it was,
Well, that's the.
anybody can get in there at that time. Can they get in there other times? So the keypad won't work after 6 p.m.,
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
10 p.m.?
Correct. 901.
Right.
Another question I have, is there gonna be storage for vehicles on that property, outside?
No.
So I can't leave my camper there overnight?
No.
I can't leave a car there overnight? I can't leave a boat there overnight?
Yeah, I went by there, I go early in the morning too with my bicycle, and there was a trailer there during Bike Week that didn't have our permission to be there, and, but then it disappeared, and we could track it down, but to answer your question, no, it's just indoor storage only is what's proposed there.
Is there gonna be a manager on property
Yes.
during the hours you're open?
Right, the office hours are less, obviously, than the access hours, but, the trend now is actually unmanned facilities. If we get to the point where technology can make that work, but that's the trend now. Like in another 5 years, storage facilities will be more and more unmanned. So you walk up and there's going to be a kiosk, or you could use your phone and scan it to our website, and you can rent online, you can pay your rent online, you can gain access. Like if you are delinquent in your rent, you can pay your rent on your phone, and then it'll suddenly give you, as soon as you pay on your phone, it'll then give you access to get in the building. So anyway, that's the trend now is unmanned, but
For now, yes.
yeah, we haven't made that leap yet.
Now, are you gonna have a manager on property?
Yeah.
During the hours you're open?
Right, I'm anxious to do that because we have 75 employees right now, All Aboard does, and my daughter runs them all, and so I've been encouraging her to make that leap to unmanned, so it'll reduce we'll still go to every property every day and check them for maintenance and stuff, but it'll reduce the amount of time that a manager's just sitting there in the office and not being productive, because sometimes I go around and I see that, and I'm like, hey man, we need to do something differently. So anyway, we're a family business. We've been here, lived here all my life, and I want to be, a good neighbor and make this thing, an awesome property, because I live right a mile away, and, I want it to be something we can all be proud of.
Thank you.
So Andy, with the cameras 24/7, if you get a complaint, you can deal with it the next day?
Absolutely,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, our lease covers all the things that were mentioned on that. That was the most detailed presentation I've heard from a planning department. But yes, so all that's not allowed, and we will, terminate the lease for any of those reasons. I'm also a member of the Self-Storage Association, and in California, they're trying to pass a bill where you can, the only way you can terminate a lease is for non-payment of rent. And so our association, our trade association is fighting that because for the very reason, if we catch somebody that's storing something they shouldn't be or in violation of the lease, we will terminate the lease, and that's the way All Aboard runs it. And we'll fight that type of legislation too, because we need to, be helpful for all of our customers.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. On the concept drawing, it has, for the upper stories, it has windows, but for the first floor, I see doors on there. Is the intent that the only access is from the main entrance and all of the, okay, because that's not really reflected on the concept drawing. So you couldn't pull up and go into an exterior door? Okay.
Right, that's it.
Just wanted to clarify.
The east side, because there's not room to drive around the back.
So there won't be doors on the first floor? It'll all be one point of access and a main entry?
Right, but we want it to make it look like a
Okay.
residential or office use there. It'll be a fully sprinkled building.
Any other questions? I have one more follow-up, because it would have been helpful if we would have kind of focused or shown where the cameras are going to be, because obviously, it's a concern from neighbors and ourselves, the monitoring aspect of it. And if there's a future aspect of this, if you can let us know where the camera's going to be installed, how many cameras, and the monitoring aspect of those cameras.
Okay.
Is there going to be a central monitoring system?
Yes, that's what we have right now. There's already 16 cameras that we installed into the existing storage facility that had some cameras, but not up to our standards. And so they're recorded online. And
what is the recording length? Because that's important. 1 week, 2 weeks?
It's based on motion sensor. Any motion, it'll start recording. So it depends on how much motion has occurred as to how long it would last, but I would say at least a week or two. And, we have a whole procedure if anybody, ever had a lock, messed with, but 9 times out of 10, it's like another family member that wanted to get in there, and they, but see, with our new security, you won't, that access is going to be, even during that access hours, you'll have to punch your code in even during access hours to get in. So it'll be always locked, secured, because again, that's what customers want, so we're really cognizant of that and trying to give people, a safe feeling when you're inside.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alrighty then. Thank you very much for your presentation. So now we call for the public input in favor of the presentation. Is there anybody in the public who speak in favor of the presentation? Alrighty, there isn't anyone. Now we call for public input to oppose the presentation. Thank you, Stuart. First person, if you can please come up, state your name and address. Thank you.
My name is Donna Marquette. I'm actually an Ohio resident, but I reside in the Snowbird at 2626 South Atlantic Avenue, and I'm the president of the HOA there. My question is, I see nothing about security for the south of the building. Oh, I heard shrubs, I heard no walls, I heard nothing about, I would like to know what they're going to present to us for our security. I'm not in opposition of the building, I'm in opposition of the security. shows not, I see no pictures, nothing, no wall mentioned. We're gonna put a wall around this. I heard the wall protecting Sea Haven. I did not hear a wall protecting 2626 condominium. I'd like some input on that, if I could have that from the owners or whoever is conducting the meeting, and how we could follow up or meet with them and as in good faith with neighbors, work with them and try. We don't want to oppose them, we want to work with them.
Thank you. Do you have a, we wait at the end for any rebuttal? They have it.
Yes, I would let all the public comment, and then afterwards, if you would like the applicant to address any of the comments, that would be fine.
Any other speaker? Yes, sir, if you can come up. Have you been sworn in?
Yes, I have.
If you could state your name and address, appreciate it.
Daniel Nathan. I'm a resident of the city of Daytona Beach. I'm also the property owner of 2624 South Atlantic, the Cowlicks property. And from the very get-go with Mr. Clark, I have made him aware. He is aware, his attorney is aware of cross easements across the property, parking and egress, and the site of his building adversely affects those deeded easements. It's a taking of my property rights, and I oppose it completely. I have made all those facts available to the city, including the paperwork, the easements, the surveys, everything deeded, and frankly, I think this whole process is a waste of time and a waste of taxpayer money, because he does not have the legal right to build on top of my easements. So, you know, it will be a matter that will be litigated if it is approved, and it will not only be litigated with Mr. Clark, it will be litigated with the city, because you are aware of my property rights and are disregarding them. So unless Mr. Clark wishes to purchase my property, go ahead. He does not have the right to build on my property rights, and this whole exercise is futile.
Thank you. Any other public input for the opposing view? Thank you. If you can come up and state your name and address.
Yes, my name is June Kraft, and I'm 158 Florida Shores Boulevard. My concern to Andy is, how are you going to police what is put in a storage unit? Having rented a storage unit before, nobody ever inspects it. How are you going to inspect that there's nothing illegal in there? I mean, Daytona Beach Shores doesn't need any more additional crime. Many times these storage units are used for business purposes, and a lot of times illegal businesses. How is he going to police that these are used specifically for storage and nothing illegal?
Thank you. Anyone else speak about the opposition? Thank you. If you can state your name and address.
Yes, my name's Steve Kelly, 178 Florida Shores Boulevard. I was going to, June just said what I was concerned about is, how do you know what's going into the storage unit? Does a manager check? What do managers do there? If a manager's not there during the total operational hours, what do you know that's going into that storage unit when there's no one there from the company? I saw that you thought it wouldn't affect the property value. And I'm not sure how anybody came to that determination. I think it'll adversely affect our property values, because we're going to be looking right at it. Also, 35 feet in height. Well, what does the allowance for, additional allowance for roof if it's gonna be 35 feet in height, but what is an additional allowance for roof height mean? So will it be above that 35 feet? And I just don't think it fits the neighborhood. I really don't. So I'm totally opposed to it, but thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, sir. Any other person? Thank you. If you can state your name and address?
Good morning, my name is Wendy Kelly, I'm Steve's wife, and I live at 178 Florida Shores Boulevard, and I will be directly looking at a 35-foot wall from here on out if this is built. My question to Mr. Clark would be, if there is already a storage unit that abuts Sherwin-Williams, how full is that storage unit, or is there anybody currently in that storage unit, and why does it have to be built on beachside? There are no other storage units on beachside. How would you feel if they built a storage unit 10 feet or 20 feet from your front window? I mean, we have a beautiful ocean view, not ocean view, but we can see A1A, we can see the buildings, we have a nice ocean breeze, we have security, I feel safe in the shores. I will not feel safe anymore with the storage building. I know of people who live in storage units. They get around it somehow. So our concern is at 10 o'clock at night, if we want to go out and walk a dog, are we going to feel safe to do that? The other thing is it's going to totally take away our view, which I'm sure, you know, it's a business thing, but still, he wouldn't like it if they built it in front of his view, nor will we have any fresh air coming in anymore. And it's just, it doesn't belong in this neighborhood. It just doesn't. We don't need a storage unit on beachside. Put it on the side, on the other side of the river, in a industrial park or someplace like that, not in a residential area. We were not told that this was gonna happen until our community found out literally about the third week of January. So nobody could fight the zoning commission. Nobody could say anything to the zoning commission because nobody was made aware of this. And that's our problem, not yours. But we're vehemently opposed to it, and despite what you may hear that we are kind of okay with it, there's nobody in our whole residential area that's okay with it. Nobody wants this there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If you can state your name and address, please.
Good morning. My name's Ron Rommel. I reside at 266 Florida Shores Boulevard. I'm also the president of the HOA at Sea Havens. I am sworn in. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Clark for his willingness to work with us. We get the impression that he really does want to be a good neighbor. I'd also like to thank the city, in particular Ms. Eaton and Mr. Cruz, for graciously responding to questions from our community. Of course, you can imagine we have 90 residents in Sea Havens. Hard to get 90 people to agree on a list of proposals or objections. But the number one objection that I hear is the compatibility issue and the character issue. In particular, it's the height of the building, and we expressed that with Mr. Clark. So at this point, what I'd like to do is, I understand that the building is in the preliminary stages of drawings and architectural detail at this point. I would just like to make an appeal. We understand the position that Mr. Clark is in, with what he's entitled to do. We understand that, but that's why I'm calling this an appeal, to keep the height at a reduced level as much as possible, and still be viable for his business. We want to be reasonable about it as well. But that's really that's probably the number one issue, and then the second issue would be the landscape buffer. I talked to Ms. Eaton with the city. Buffer type D calls for the canopy trees, 2 canopy trees per 100 linear feet. The City of Daytona Beach Shores allows for 3 palm trees in substitution for one of the canopy trees, which we've talked to the developer about. And it's the height. We want the crown, the foliage to be visible from the west side of the wall. And, but anyway, that's the appeal. Anything they can do to accommodate it would be really, really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come up and talk? Okay, so, having said that, we'll go ahead with the rebuttal desired by the applicant. Thank you.
Joey Posey, 420 South Nova again. Well, I guess Ron's is the most recent in my mind here, and again, they've been great to work with too. It's trying to be a good neighbor, and I hear him loud and clear also, and that, you know, again, anytime he wants to meet out there again or have a follow-up meeting, you know, as we're moving through this process, you know, this comes back for site plans, so there's no reason that we can't continue to work on this and, you know, make sure it's the best it can be. There's some things that are just maybe out of reach completely. You know, listening to one neighbor say that just the storage use in general is just not a compatible use, I obviously would disagree, but again, it's everyone's entitled to their own opinion too. The specific details regarding the security of the southerly side, at this point, I believe it's a landscape buffer. If I remember correctly also, there was a PVC fence that used to be up there, I think, up until the hurricane. So I'm not sure if that's being replaced, because I believe it was the adjoining owner's fence that was up. But again, happy to work on it, and it wasn't until right now that I heard that issue, so. Again, I'm not sure what their plans are, but at this point, we were looking to landscape that area consistent with the city code, so. And you know, just again, thinking about this in logistics, it's a very low traffic generator, so you're really talking about maybe a handful of people that would be accessing the facility, because you usually put your stuff, and then, you know, if you have, obviously, some folks use a storage facility, you don't go visit your stuff. It stays put, and that's where you leave it. The details about the how you monitor and how you keep track of what's going on. I was trying to talk to my client about this, and there's a lot of safeguards in this when you talk about, you know, especially having a manager on site. I know that there's obviously a move away from that. Currently, there is one, and it's always monitored. There's always cameras watching, and it's always during business hours. So there's a lot of ways to catch that. And then interestingly, I asked him how often this comes up, because he's got several dozen facilities, so we've got a pretty good body of work to figure that out. And he said, at best, 0.5% of all facilities. And he said, of those facilities, it's the older facilities. It's the roll-up doors. It's not more modern facilities like the climate-controlled buildings. So in terms of safety, it's practically a non-issue with these type of buildings. And another example he gave, for instance, that I'm sure that there's a way we could do this here, is that in Daytona, he offers the police, the folks, the canine dogs, an opportunity to train. That it's an opportunity to use your canine dogs in the facility, and then that's an easy way to track if there's anything going on. So in terms of you know, safety and security, that's a very clever way of making sure that folks stick to what their lease says, and obviously enforces the lease too. The other thing I heard with Mr. Nathan, again, I don't have a good response that makes him happy, but again, we adamantly disagree with him as to the nature of that easement, and we have done everything possible in terms of preparing surveys for him, showing him how his easement doesn't apply in the way he believes it does. And again, I'm making sure that's on the record too, and it's just as we wouldn't impact our rights on his property also, because that easement also is on his property, and we're not prohibiting him from doing what he wants with his business. The same would be true of ours. So wherever that heads, it heads, but at least it's on the record that we disagree with him wholeheartedly on every point he made.
That was my question, easement.
Chair?
Is that an open easement?
Excuse me.
No, please, I'll let the board member first, please.
Have you read the easement?
Yes, I have.
Is it an open easement or is it a dedicated easement?
Making sure I understand the distinction you're drawing.
Open easement, anybody can use it. Dedicated easement is limited to just.
It's a non-exclusive easement that gives him a right to park. That's it.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we're preserving every spot for him that was within that area. So it's the same number of spots that existed before the development, will be there after the development, and you have just as much of a right to them.
Okay, thank you.
So my question was, describe the type of easement. So it sounds like it's an ingress egress to a parking, to allow folks to park on the property.
Correct.
Okay. And your structure, your building will not interfere with that, with his ability to park?
But no, it will not. It's the same number of parking slots, and to be honest with you, I guess the improvements, I imagine it makes it a much, a better traffic flow for him anyway. And especially since it'd be a low-traffic generator too, which is, I think, the biggest issue. I'm struggling with that question, because had this been a more resident, or more commercial intense use, there'd be people parking in those spots that have just as much of a right that he would to park in those spots. So I struggle to understand the rationale of saying that a storage use is going to impact him when the storage use is probably the least impactful of uses for parking.
Do people park now in the spots?
Not in the spots, well, again, I would probably leave it to the landowner to describe this, but my understanding is it's limited to no in the spots that are on our property to the northerly side where the building is, that it's virtually none. So it's really restriping and relocating closer to his building that would be accomplished by the new construction.
Any other?
Andy Clark with All Aboard Storage again. So it's the south half of my property and the north half of his property. That's the area in which the cross access and parking easement occurs, not my entire parcel, not his entire parcel, but the south half of mine, north half of his. And, but you asked if people are using it now, and yes, when Calix is open, people, drive in, and park, on my side when it's busy, and so that'll still occur, and there's still the same, we had our civil engineer count, the number of spots that are within the south half of my property. It's like 18, and so those 18 will still remain, after the new building is built. And, so, even if.
Can you please once again clarify, because I keep hearing it over and over again, the height of the building, when they were mentioning it, includes the roof, or it does not include the roof? Because I think there's a confusion, and if you can clarify for all of us, what is the height with the roof?
And what we've committed to Sea Havens is on the back end, 35 feet. I believe, yeah, exactly, that I think there's a give or take between a foot there on the roof, but that's what we've committed to them. And the only embellishments we're talking about are on the front end. And they're not occupied space, it's just making it look like an office building. So we want to make sure that the part that they're visible and that they're impacted by, that we made a firm commitment to. So that was how the condition was drafted. So.
And that west side has an existing 6-foot-high wall right now?
Correct.
Is it gonna be higher?
It's their wall, so.
It's their wall?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you. Is there any other individual that'd like to come up?
Chair, he has already spoken, but if you would like to entertain him, you certainly can.
Okay, yes, if you state your name again, please, and
Daniel Nathan, property owner of Calix, property that is probably the biggest holdup right now because of easements. And Mr. Clark and his attorney continually focus on the parking easements. Their building would sit on top of my parking spaces now, but they fail to address the second part of the easements, which is egress and ingress, which cover the entire property with the exception of the grass lot. and placing a building on top of that, pretty obvious that it's going to interfere with egress and ingress. So I just want to make that clear that they are dancing around the easement issues, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir. Alrighty, at this point, if there's nobody else, already, state your name and address.
Anna Marquette, president of the HOA at 2626 South Atlantic Avenue. I'd like to request a meeting or have Mr. Clark contact us in regards to the security. I'd like that to be duly noted so that he can have time to contact us at 2626. Our hours of operation are Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Thank you, duly noted, appreciate it. Happy to do it. Alrighty. Okay, at this point, nobody else? We can have any board discussion or any questions that we have for Noel or?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Let's close the hearing, and then the board can discuss.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to close the hearing, and then we're going to have board discussions concerning, if you have any questions. I have a couple of questions for Noel, if nobody else does.
Go ahead.
If you can put up the site map that you have, I think the first one. Shows the neighborhood. And I would like some clarification just to play it safe. Right there, those 26, is it 2626?
Yes.
Condominium? That is I went by there, it's 5-story condominium plus the roof.
Correct.
And there must be, how many units in that condominium?
I'm not sure of the unit count, and
42.
42 units.
52 units. And that condominium has been there since the 70s, apparently.
It was prior to the Sea Havens development, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, and it's in the corner right across from the Peck Plaza.
Correct.
All right. My other question is, you stated it, and I wrote it down, that Sea Haven has a couple of units that are 3 stories high, correct?
Yeah, these ones to the north here, you can barely see my arrow. The end units, the end units of these buildings are 2-story, and then the interior, there's a total of 8 units that are 3 stories and 35 feet tall.
Do you know the height of those 3 stories?
It's a 35-foot height average in there. The peak's a little higher, but the average is,
And
which
that
is
back-
where we take the roof height.
And that backs up right to our city park.
Correct. That's Beachcomber
And
Park.
by the way, it's a very nice park. I haven't been there, except right now, it's really nice. Then the property that is considered, there is a property fence that belongs to Sea Haven, correct? And then there's a street. And the street is about, what, 15 feet in wide?
I do have the site plan. Yeah, so the wall here, I do have some photos down here.
There you go.
So, according to the Sea Havens plat of time of development, yes, the wall is 6 foot high from that grade. There is 10 feet between the wall and the roadway. The roadway is 20 feet, and then there's some parking stalls that are in front of or just to the north of it that are 20 feet. So that's 54 feet between the front of the parking stalls to the wall, and then an additional 20 feet is the setback for the building.
I needed that clarification. All righty. That's all I have. Oh, and last but not least, so I was not aware, so there was no fencing between the condominium and the new building that we're proposing?
So that is correct. There was an existing fence there at time of application, but then we saw 2 hurricanes, and so this fence is currently not there. It is a fence of the condominiums if they're looking to repair it and maintain it the way it was. If not, then it will be at time of site plan that we would review for consistency with that screening requirement.
Thank you. Any other questions for Noel?
I do, if I may, Chair. Noel, are you aware of the easement? Do you have any input on the easement or any comments?
From the review, it is a parking and access easement. The applicant has demonstrated that they maintain the same number of parking spaces that are in that easement. The applicant has provided an indemnification document that states that if the city were to be sued, that they would cover all costs of that. The city, it will not be
Okay, good.
responsible.
Thank you. That was very good to know. Thank you.
All righty. No other discussion?
I have a question. So, in the project description, it speaks to the square footage and, I'm so sorry. In the project description, it speaks to the square footage and general description, but it doesn't explain or specify that it's going to be interior access to units only, which I think is different. And you pointed out, sir, that there is a difference in safety characterization if you have exterior entry to units. So that is kind of where you see more of the issues. And as a former law enforcement officer, I can attest to that being the typical problem. Is there any way that we could specify in that description that if it's approved, it's only if it's interior access to units only?
I think you guys as a board can add that as a condition of your approval. And then that way it can even be provided in the documents that you guys propose at time of site plan. You guys will be reviewing it then as well, so.
That would speak to the public safety that is part of our responsibility in reviewing it. And I think it would alleviate some of the concerns about safety as well if we knew that.
All right.
You guys can add that. I would recommend incorporating that attachment that is their conditions, as well as including any that you might have as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. At this point, after the discussion, is there a motion by the board?
So I would move that we approve special exception SPEX 120222030 with the conditions that the provisions that are outlined by the property owner be included, as well as a specification and that the project is access only via interior controlled and only accessible during the business hours that are specified.
I second the motion.
You second the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, any? No comment? All right. Sherry, can I have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Ms. Burt?
Yes.
Ms. Tornatori?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly?
No.
Mr. Horian?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes. All righty. Thank you. At this point, any action items? Next meeting is going to be
We will.
in April? Second week?
Next month.
Yep, hopefully. If there isn't any other concerns or board comments? Happy Easter. Meeting is adjourned.